I remember the first time I walked into Wilson Hall. It seemed like a typical college dorm. Old, a little rundown, but nothing out of the ordinary. I had heard the stories. Of course, everyone has. They say it's haunted by the ghost of a student who died there years ago. I thought it was all just rumors, something to make the place sound cooler than it was. I was wrong. So wrong. It was late, around 2 a.m. The halls were completely quiet. Too quiet. I had been working late on an assignment, and after hours of staring at my screen, I was exhausted. I was heading back to my dorm when I heard it. Banging. Loud, rhythmic banging coming from the walls. I thought I'd just walked into a dorm room with a crazy party going on. But no, the hall was empty. The noise, it was coming from inside the walls. I tried to ignore it. I kept walking, thinking maybe it was just the building settling. But then it got worse. The banging stopped, and all of a sudden, the temperature dropped. I mean, it went from warm and comfortable to ice cold, my breath fogged in the air. I don't know why I didn't turn back. Maybe I was too curious. Maybe I wanted to prove it was all in my head. That's when I felt it. A pressure, like someone was watching me. No, not just watching, following. I could feel a cold hand brush against my shoulder. I spun around. No one, just empty space. The hall, still, silent, and yet something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Then I heard the whispers. I'm telling you, there were whispers, just soft enough to make you question if they were real. But they were there, coming from every direction. I couldn't tell where they were coming from, but it felt like they were coming from the walls themselves. Get out. That's all I could hear, over and over. Get out. That's when I did something stupid. I walked further down the hall, to the end, to where the old dorm rooms are. They say no one goes down there at night. I should have listened. I reached the end of the hall, and that's when I saw it. A door. It wasn't even on my floor. It wasn't even supposed to be there. It was just there. I knew something was off, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at it. The door creaked open on its own, and that's when I heard it. A low voice. Stay. I don't remember running. I don't remember even making it to my room. All I know is I woke up the next morning drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. And the worst part? That wasn't the end. That wasn't even close to the end. The next day, I heard more stories. The kind that kept you up at night. People who had stayed in Wilson Hall for years. People who heard the same things. People who felt the same chill running down their spine in the middle of the night. A few said they'd seen doors slam shut on their own. Others felt something push them in the hallways, an unseen force. But nobody ever stayed long enough to see what it was. Everyone was too scared to stick around. I left Ohio University soon after that. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me, that maybe whatever was in Wilson Hall wasn't done with me. And the scariest part? After I left, I kept hearing about more and more people having the same experiences. The banging, the cold spots, the whispers. The ghost of that student is still there. If you ever find yourself at Ohio University, Don't go to Wilson Hall. Don't listen to the whispers. Don't stay to see what's waiting for you. Because once you hear those whispers, once you feel that chill, you might not make it out. And whatever's in there, it might not just let you leave. Stay. Just stay. Before we move on to the next story, if you like true scary stories, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for more creepy tales every week. What would you do if you woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of whispering, but no one was there? And if you open your eyes just enough to see the walls of your room bleeding, I wish I could say that I was dreaming. But what I experienced in the old East building at the University of North Carolina was no dream. And it wasn't the worst part of the story. Not by far. This isn't just some urban legend. This happened to me, and now I'll never be able to forget the horrors tied to one room, the red room. The camera fades to black for a moment, then returns to the narrator's face, illuminated by a single light. I was a freshman when I first heard the stories. I mean, everyone talked about it. The Red Room, a room in Old East, the oldest dorm on campus. The kind of place where the halls creak, and the air always feels too thick to breathe. Most students brush off the rumors, ghost stories told late at night, whispers about a tragedy no one could fully explain. But I wasn't like most students. I was curious, and curious people tend to get into trouble. One night, during my first week at UNC, a friend dared me to stay the night in that very room. I laughed it off at first. "It's just a stupid story," I said. "A prank." But he insisted, and like an idiot, I agreed. What harm could it really do? I didn't know it then, but I was about to make a mistake that would haunt me forever. The moment I stepped into room 209, the red room, I felt it. The air felt wrong. Thick. Like something had happened here that shouldn't have been forgotten. The room itself wasn't anything special. Old furniture, a single bed with a faded blanket, and a desk shoved awkwardly in the corner. But the walls, they were strange. I don't know how to explain it. Like they were watching me. You might call it paranoia, but that feeling was real. Something was waiting. I laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. "This place is creepy," I muttered, hoping my voice would make me feel braver. But even my words felt too small, too fragile against the silence. I settled in, telling myself I'd just sleep and get out in the morning. But that was when it started. At first, it was barely noticeable, a low hum, like a whisper, coming from somewhere behind the walls. I thought it was just the building settling, maybe old pipes or the wind. But then the whispers got louder, and that's when I realized the whispers weren't coming from the walls. They were coming from inside the room. I froze. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But it wasn't. The whispers began to form words. Words I couldn't understand. They sounded almost familiar, like voices I should have recognized but couldn't place. My breath quickened, and I sat up in bed, my mind racing. Was someone messing with me? Was I being pranked? But no one was there. I thought about leaving, but then I saw it. I swear to you, I saw the walls move. Slowly at first, but then it was unmistakable. The pale, cracked plaster shifted, bleeding. Not like a person bleeds. Not blood dripping, not splattering. No, this was something different. It was as if the walls were crying. The red was thick, seeping through the cracks like it was alive. I don't know how long I stared, unable to move. My body was paralyzed with fear. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The air was so heavy that even breathing felt impossible. My eyes started to burn from the red glow that filled the room, and my mind spun. This couldn't be real. I must have been dreaming. But I wasn't. The room was still there. The blood was still there. And then the whispers returned, louder, more frantic this time. It was like the room was alive, begging for something. I ran. I don't even remember how I got out of that room, but I remember the moment the door slammed behind me. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for air, feeling the cold night on my skin. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't make sense of what had happened, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ever going back inside that building. But my story doesn't end there. The next day, I tried to tell a few friends what happened. Most of them laughed it off. Old buildings play tricks on your mind, they said. But there was one person who wasn't laughing. A senior who lived on my floor. He leaned in close and whispered, "You saw the red room, didn't you?" He didn't wait for me to answer. He just shook his head, almost like he was pitying me. I stayed there once. Worst thing I ever did. He told me stories of students who had stayed in that room and never been the same. Some transferred schools, some left in the middle of the night, and some disappeared entirely. But the most chilling part, he said the room doesn't just take people. No, it keeps them. The spirits of those who stayed, those who were marked, they wander the halls now, and some of them, they don't even know they're dead. I still don't know what happened that night. Was it a dream, a trick of the mind, or was it something far worse? Something ancient that's still waiting in that room? I'd like to say I left the story behind, but I can't, because just last week, I heard another account. Another student, someone I barely know, talking about the strange noises coming from room 209 in Old East. He's not the first, and he won't be the last. If you ever visit UNC, don't make the mistake I did. Whatever you do, stay away from room 209. The red room isn't just a place. It's a warning. And whatever you hear, don't listen to the whispers. They want you to stay. But you shouldn't. You can't. I don't know if I can ever forget those eyes. And I don't think I ever want to. This happened to me at Oxford, in one of the oldest buildings on campus. Late at night, when the air feels thicker, like something ancient is stirring. I still don't know if it was real, or if it was something far worse than real. But I'll never forget what I saw. Let me tell you what happened, and why I'll never look at Oxford or the people there the same way again. It was late, way past midnight. I had just finished a long study session and was walking through one of the older buildings on campus. It's a place where you can feel the history, you know? You could almost hear the whispers of past generations in the air. And that night, I wasn't alone. I saw Alex, someone I had taken a few classes with, but not really a close friend. He was standing there, leaning against the wall, looking like he hadn't slept in days. We started talking just casual stuff, how the semester was going, the usual, but something felt off. It was like he was too quiet, too still. And then it happened. I noticed at first, the way his eyes seemed to shift. At first, I thought it was the bad lighting, but then it didn't stop. His pupils, they were fading, dimming, until his entire eyes, his whole eyes, became pitch black. I'm not talking about the pupils dilating. I'm talking about his entire eyes, black as midnight, like there was nothing inside. It was like I was looking into a void, a hole that went on forever. I froze. He opened his mouth to speak, but it wasn't his voice anymore. It was guttural, unhuman. "You shouldn't have come here," it said. The voice, no, it wasn't Alex anymore, twisted the words. I couldn't even understand half of it. The room seemed to close in on me, and my heart was pounding in my ears. I couldn't think. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, needed to run, but I was frozen, locked in place. And then, I don't know how I found the strength to move, but I ran. I ran until I was outside, gasping for air. I turned back. The building stood there, silent, but I couldn't stop shaking. The next day, I found Alex. I needed to know if he remembered anything, but when I asked him, his face was blank. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know what you mean." He didn't remember any of it. No black eyes, no distorted voice, nothing, as if it had never happened. And that's when I realized it wasn't just me. No one else had seen it. No one else had heard it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't the only one who'd seen something strange. I started to hear rumors. Stories about the building being haunted. Something to do with its ancient history. The kind of rumors that only get passed around when something unnatural happens. I didn't want to return, but I had to know what was going on. Was it just a trick of the light, or something far worse? There he was again, another student, another set of pitch black eyes. But this time it wasn't Alex. It was someone I had never seen before. "You shouldn't have come back. It's too late." That's when I understood. The eyes, the voices, they weren't just Alex. They were something else. Something that possessed them. Something tied to the building. If you ever find yourself at Oxford, and if you ever step into that old building late at night, don't look into their eyes. You don't know who's behind them, because once you do, you might never leave.